I've been doing this for a very long time. I first read your books over 20 years ago, and um, I think I would have the courage to look at what is really bothering me and then maybe be able to start to resolve the real issue. But I have times where I'm better at it, and then I just go back to it. And I know because I've been doing this journey and this process long enough that I know that the suffering comes from running away from it, but then I still find that, hey, I'm running away, and I'm chasing out there, and I know that there is nothing out there. I have to come back to myself. So.
And that's good, because it's forgetting and remembering, forgetting and remembering, forgetting and remembering. And each time you remember longer from the last time you remember.
So I shouldn't feel so bad about forgetting. Just congratulate
And
myself.
there we go, because that is the hardest part in many ways, is what I referred to at the beginning about the judgment, the shame, the beating up of oneself. Without that, and I know that's a big without that, imagine your life for a moment without that. Because then it would just be, I forget and I remember. I forget and I remember. I forget and I remember. And I remember more and more and more and more and more and more and more of the time. And if it's not a big deal that you have forgetting moments, then what's the big deal? So it's the judgmental voice, and that's one of the keys here that this we teach in this work, which is to disengage from the bully. Disengage from the voice that tells you you're no good. Disengage from that self-loathing, from the shame. But you say, I deserve it, but I forgot, but I did just eat something that I knew wasn't going to make me feel good, and I did it anyway. So then you pile suffering on top of suffering. Then you ate something that doesn't feel good in your body, and now you're judging yourself for it. So now you've doubled your pain instead of just not feeling very good. And if self-loathing or judgment helped you, that would be one thing. But what all of the experiments have shown, and Kristen Neff has shown this about compassion, that it's compassion and kindness that actually leads to change. Have you ever truly changed by beating yourself up? Ask yourself that. That's a really good question to ask yourself. Has that ever happened? Has it ever led to long-lasting change? And yet we do it over and over and over and over again, partly because we don't know how, and partly because we keep thinking that if I could just beat myself up a little bit more, then I would really change. I'd get to the critical mass of judgment and self-loathing, and somehow that would lead to change. As if we beat ourselves up enough, if we loathe ourselves enough, we will turn into kind, loving beings. Yes, thin, kind, loving beings. Right. And yet, part of what we're doing here is for you to ask yourself to know what you already know. You already know that judgment, deprivation, shame, punishment, and guilt do not lead to long-lasting change. You already know that. And yet, You keep doing it. We keep doing it. Because somehow that's what we know. But yet we know that it doesn't work. But the thought of kindness, the thought of turning to ourselves in kindness and saying, oh, honey, you forgot again. I mean, think of yourself when you stub your toe. Your first response is, oh, shit. It's not, oh, ouch. Oh, I'm so sorry. Your first response to yourself is harshness most of the time. When are you going to learn that there's a chair sticking out there, or, not to walk so fast, or that voice? You know that voice. So the thought, and I think for me, this was one of the most radical things about not dieting. Not dieting equaled being kind to myself. And I felt like if I was kind to myself, all hell would break loose. If I was kind to myself, I'd sit in bed or on the couch in pink sponge rollers, eating chocolate, watching television all day long. I'd never get up. I'd never do anything. Kindness meant self-indulgence. Kindness meant laziness, slothfulness. Kindness meant not moving, eating all day, binging. Kindness, in my mind in those days, was related to binging. Somehow, if I was kind to myself, then I would just eat and eat and eat. If I was kind to myself, I'd forget. And I wouldn't want to remember. If I was kind to myself, I wouldn't change. And yet, what we don't take into account there is that it's the longing to change. It's the glimpse you have of what your life could actually be like, of what you're like, of what the promise of yourself. You already feel that. You already know that. And it's not the beating up of yourself when you forget that causes you to remember. It's because you want to, because remembering, taking care of yourself, being kind to yourself, remembering what you love feels good. It feels good.